would like I would like to, before beginning, I would like to thank the association Arwa and Arwa Kharobi for the invitation to present my results for my PhD, a PhD that I've done under the supervision of Hélène Coutinho and Marie Tillier at the École pratique des hautes études. So today I will speak about the results from the study of the individuals from Qafzeh Cave. But just before beginning, I just want to present some sites from the Middle East that I will speak about because I did some comparisons. So I want to present them, present a little bit of the history of the research in the Middle East, and after we will focus on the fossils from Qafzeh Cave. So the Levant is presented offered by Joseph said, for example, as the central bus station of the Pleistocene migration routes spanning from Europe, Africa, and Asia. It's varied at the crossroads of the three major continents. And for the period, the cultural period that interested us today, numerous fossils have been discovered and dated between 220,000 and 45,000 years old, and they present an important anatomical diversity, which lead to some debates about the relationship between the individuals to understand if they are from the same species or from different species. And which is very interesting is that they are an important anatomical diversity, but they all were found with the same archaeological and technological complex, which is the Mousterian. And in Europe, the Mousterian is associated generally with the Neanderthals, but in the Levant, it's something a little bit different. So the research in the Levant began with the excavations by Francis Turville Peter in 1925 in El Wadi El Hamoud, in the caves of Zoutier and Émiré. And in the cave of Zoutier, he discovered a school that he named the Galilee School. At the time, it was believed to be the first human remains dated from the Middle Paleolithic discovered outside Europe. And the first studies pointed some similarities with the European Neanderthals, but with some differences too. After it was new excavations at Zoutier shows that the skull was not from the Mousterian layers, but the Acheulean Yabrudian. But nevertheless, it was this first discovery that led to new other excavations in the region and lead to an interest in that region for archaeological and bioanthropology. And Francis Turville Peter and Theodore Macon and Dorothy Garrod continue their research, and in particularly in the region of the Mount Carmel, in El Wadi El Mugara, which is a valley with some caves that have delivered a very important archaeological site for the Middle Paleolithic. Two examples are the Tabun Cave, where excavations were conducted in the early 30s by Dorothy Garrod, and she discovered at least 8 individuals, including a nearly complete skeleton Tabun C1 and a mandible Tabun C2. Another site, school, was excavated by Theodore Macon, and he discovered at least 10 individuals, 3 non-adults and 7 adults, always in the 30s. The two sites have some similar datations. And we can have here some examples of the skeleton discovered with the Tabun C1 burial here and the burial of School 5. So when they discovered these fossils, the first question was, are they from the same species or from two different species? First of all, the first analysis conducted Dorothy Garrod and Theodore Macon to consider them probably belonging to two different species because there are significant differences in general robustness, but also in lower limb proportions. And in the first studies, they published it at two different as two different species. But Arthur Keith, for him, there are no such differences, and for him, we are dealing with the individual of one race. So when they published the final monography of the Mount Carmel individuals, they classified them as all only one individual, only one species, with the Zoutier school, the Tabun, and the school fossils. And they explained the differences by chronological reasons. For them, the individual from Tabun were older than the individual from school. So that could explain the differences. And at the same time, there was some excavation in the Mount Carmel. There were also excavations at Qafzeh Cave. I will speak a little bit more after present the site more, but just to say that these excavations, the first excavations at Qafzeh, lead to the discovery of 7 individuals, including the skull the skull of Qafzeh, which at the time was the best preserved skull discovered in the site. Unfortunately, René Neuville was archaeologist but also a diplomat. Was called by France to come back to Europe due to the Second World War, and after due to the creation of different states in the Middle East. So he was very occupied with his diplomat profession. So he did not have the time to publish the results of the Qafzeh Cave. And unfortunately, after he died before publishing it. So it's only in the 50s that Francis Clark Howell reanalyzed the fossil both from School and Qafzeh and proposed that they were not from Paleanthropus palestinensis like Artukis and Theodore Macon proposed, but they were probably more proto-Cro-Magnon, so modern humans fossils. And after that, some of their discoveries were done in the Middle East and in the Levant. A lot of post-war excavations were conducted, including at Qafzeh Cave, and some excavation from the 50s by Moshe Stekelis lead to the discovery of the Qafzeh 1 remains, the remains of a young child, and Franco-Israeli excavations in the 80s and 90s leads to the discovery of new fossils, including the burial of Qafzeh 2, which is one of the most complete skeletons from the Levant. And it's interestingly, this fossil presents a mosaic of modern, Neanderthal, and also unique characteristics. Other research were conducted in Amud Cave, which is in Galilee, like Qafzeh. This research was led by Isashi Suzuki and Fuyuji Takai in the 60s, and they exhumed at least 4 individuals, including the nearly complete adult skeleton of Amud 1. And we have here some 3D reconstructions of the fossil. At the time of the discovery, it was described as similar to local Neanderthals, but with some affinities with the Qafzeh school group. Other excavations were conducted between 91 and 94 by an Israeli team, leading to the discovery of the Amud 7 child, a young child discovered in the site also. Other interesting discoveries were conducted in the 19th by Japanese and Syrian researchers. And two child's burials were discovered in 93 and 97. The two individuals came from different stratigraphic layers, and they present, unfortunately, a significant cranial fragmentation. So as we see, we have a lot of fossils presenting some different characteristics, and they are leading some debates for the human settlements in the Middle Paleolithic. And two main scenarios are proposed, or an alternating of two populations, European and early anatomical modern humans, or a more complex pattern implying regional and multiple influences. So why, with all these fossils, there are still some debates concerning the human settlements? First of all, there are numerous fossils, but some studies all in the first studies focus on the holotypes. I call them the holotypes because were chosen to represent the individuals from the population, underestimating the intrasite variability. It was, for example, the case for School 5, which was chosen because it was the biggest, the tallest, the more robust, and the well preserved fossil from skull. And often the studies about Skull Cave focused on that individual. Another issue is the fact that, as we have seen before, there are evidence of mixture of modern Neanderthal and plesiomorphic feature on some bones. We have seen that for Kebara, for Amut, but also it's possible to see that for Tabun Situ. And according to the characteristics selected, the author have different interpretations. Some consider the Tabun Situ as a Neanderthal, others as modern humans, and others did not pronounce or say that they are just an archaic individual. Another problem is that the fossils are often distorted and fragmented, like is the case of, for example, Amud 1. You can see here on the 3D reconstruction that each color represents a different fragment, and also they have some important features missing, like the face, like most of the face of the individual of Amud 1, which is more difficult to interpret some characteristics, of course. So what can be done to overcome such limits? First of all, the discovery of new fossil can bring new information, and the last years were very rich in discovery, like the discovery of the calvaria from Manot, the maxillary from Mislia, or some human remains from Enkashis, for just cite some few. But also, we can use new methodological approaches to previously discovered fossils. We have these fossils already discovered, and it's interesting to give a new high with new methodology. And this is the way we choose to do, and more particularly to the site of Qafzeh. So why Qafzeh Cave? First of all, because the chronology of the site is very interesting. It's at the heart of the Middle Paleolithic for the Levant. It's dated from 92,000 years old, so it's really at the middle of the Paleolithic for the Levant. Also because numerous individuals were discovered, at least 28 individuals, with some are partial skeletons or nearly complete skeleton, but also some are isolated tooth or bones. But it's very interesting because it allows us to do an intrasite comparison and to study the intrasite variability. And also because some individuals discovered are not were not studied, like for example Qafzeh 25, like we will see. So I will just present two individuals because they are the ones who have bring us the most informations, and I will discuss more about the informations and the evidence from these two individuals. The first one is Qafzeh 9. It was discovered in 1967. Sorry, it is the most complete skeleton from Qafzeh. At the time of this discovery, it was identified as a female and with an age comprised between 15 and 19 years old. So it's the one who is often used as the holotype of the Qafzeh group. And another fact, very interesting, it was discovered in a double burial with the Qafzeh 10 child. And the other individual we'll speak about is Qafzeh 25. It was discovered during the last year of the excavation, and it's represented by a skull and some intracranial remains, except the pelvis and the lower limb that were unfortunately not preserved because of a sounding that destroyed the lower part. And the sounding probably destroyed the lower part because the fossil has undergone significant taphonomical processes that have altered the fossil, and you can see, for example, for the cranium, that it's an important bilateral flattening and also fragmentation. So it was very difficult to identify the individual. By comparison with the others individual from Qafzeh, it is believed to be a young individual and probably a male. So we use paleoimaging to study this individual. We can use CT or microCT acquisition, which allow us to observe and describe the different bone tissues and materials with the CT slices, but also to do some 3D reconstruction and to see the 3D surface, but also the inner structures, and which is very interesting to have access to this inner structure. And after, we can do some morphometric studies, paleopathological studies, and to understand a little bit more of the diversity of the individuals. So, beginning with the information that we have found on Qafzeh 25, we use a CT scan provided by the Department of Anatomy of the Tel Aviv University. And you can see, for example, here the heavy crushing and flattening of the skull, because this is the largest part of the skull, so it's very, very crushed. So it's very crushed, have an important taphonomical alterations, but two structures inside the skull were well preserved. It's the bony labyrinth. So you can see here and here the two bony labyrinths of the Qafzeh 25 fossil. And this structure is very interesting. It's a structure that allows us to hear It's in the inner ear. It allows us to hear, but also to balance. It's an organ which is important for the balance and the hearing processes. And it's in paleoanthropology is very interesting because it is believed to be informative to understand phylogenetic relationships, particularly because some publications have shown that there are some differences between modern humans and Neanderthals. As for example, just to give a quick example, the position of one of the semicircular canals is not the same between the different species. For example, here, a chimpanzee, the position is low compared to the posterior canal. So the lateral canal is have a low position compared to the posterior canal. In modern humans, it's in the middle, but in Neanderthals, it has a high position compared to the posterior canal. So it can allow us to distinguish modern humans from Neanderthals. Another interesting thing is that the morphology of the inner ear is definitive at the moment of birth, so it allows us to compare non-adults and adults individuals, which is very interesting for Qafzeh because we have numerous non-adult individuals. So I will not enter in the detail of the statistical analysis, but we have done some studies, and I will present the results from the principal component analysis more here today. Just to present a few features from Qafzeh 25 compared to the other individuals, you have some values that most of the time are the limits of the variation. Some are high values, others are low values, but it's interesting because it's expand the range of variation that was known for the Qafzeh Cave. But I will not enter in much detail because which is very interesting in the results from the principal component analysis. So we can see that Qafzeh 25 is positioned in this analysis, which is a projection in two axes of the different variables. From the inner ear, we can see that the individual of Qafzeh 25 is located here, so at the limit of the Qafzeh school group, which is logical because it has some high values for some variables, but some other very low. So its position at the limit was expected. But which one wasn't expected is the diversity that we found at Qafzeh. Indeed, as you can see, all the individuals are not close one to other, but they are positioned in different parts of the graph, being here in this circle, but they are not close. We expected that the individual would be closer and would be morphologically closer, which is not the case. Indeed, we can even thought that there are more diversity within the Qafzeh group than between some other individual. For example, the individual from Dederier, Hamoud, or Kebara are much more similar than the individual from Qafzeh itself. The other thing that was very interesting in that analysis is that there are not a clear separation between the Qafzeh individuals and the others individual from other caves. For example, Dederier, Hamoud, and Kebara are often described as Neanderthals, but here we cannot see that difference that we could have expected. We cannot see a clear separation between these individuals and the individuals of Qafzeh. The individuals of Qafzeh are considered early modern humans, the others more Neanderthals, but here on that analysis we cannot see that. And also an individual is completely isolated on that analysis is the individual from Tabun C1. So we added some other individuals, and in particularly some individual from the Middle Paleolithic of Europe, so Neanderthals, and some individual from Upper Paleolithic from Europe and Africa. And these last ones are early anatomical modern humans. The fact interesting is that the individual from Qafzeh just come between the individuals, the European, the Neanderthal ones, and the modern humans ones. So it's closing a little bit the gap between the Neanderthals and the modern humans on that graph. Other interesting things is that some individuals considered Neanderthal, like Kebara 1, are more close to anatomically modern humans than to Neanderthals. Tabunsi 1 continue isolated on that graph. Also, I spoke before about the diversity observed in Qafzeh. We can see that diversity here on that graph. But when we compare with other sites where they have when there are numerous individuals, like La Ferraci here or Cima de los Huesos, we saw also a big diversity in that site, a big morphological diversity for the bony labyrinth. It's interesting because in modern and current populations, it is believed that there are not big diversity in there are not big regional diversity. It is believed that we can identify individuals from the inner here, and we can identify the regions where they are from with the inner here. But here we cannot see that there are an important diversity within the different sites. So just to summarize, at Qafzeh we have found for the bony labyrinth, for the inner here, an unexpected individual variation. We thought that the Qafzeh 25, even if it's a early modern human, it stands at the limit of the variability, both modern and from Qafzeh, and that we have not a clear separation between archaic individuals and modern humans. So it's very interesting because it's different from what was published before. Other interesting fact is that some individual classically called Neanderthals are or closer to modern humans or isolated on the different PCAs. So it challenges a little bit the common taxonomic attribution, but we have to say to stay cautious. It's only one structure, the inner here. So we'll try to see what information we can have from the mandible. And for that, we have studied the mandible of Qafzeh 9. It was affected by taphonomical processes. So before doing the same morphological and metric analysis, we had to 3D reconstruct the virtually reconstruct the mandible. So we use the less distorted parts of the mandible to reconstruct the distorted or missing parts. So for example, we use the the branch the left branch that was conserved, the right branch, sorry, which was conserved, to reconstruct the left branch, etc. So we could have a complete restored mandible where we could do some analysis. So it was very important, this part of the reconstruction, because we could have new dimensions that were previously missing. So it completed the information, and it was very important for the principal component analysis. So we can see that the reconstruction shift the position of the Qafzeh mandible on the graph, and it's very the position of the individuals of Qafzeh are very interesting here, because we have one individual which stand close to the to the school's individuals, but we have another one which is completely isolated on the graph, which is Qafzeh 25. Unfortunately, they are the only mandibles available for Qafzeh. Other thing interesting is that this time we can see some differences between the Qafzeh school here and some more individual presenting the mosaic of characteristics. Hamoud, Kebara, and Tabunwan are located on different parts of the graph, so they present some differences, more differences than before. However, Hamoud 1 stand here very close to Hoalo 2, which is an upper Paleolithic individual from the Levant, and it is a modern human. So on this graph, we have seen that the two mandibles from Qafzeh are very different, but also two individual from Tabun, the Tabun 2 and the Tabun 1 are also very different on this graph. We have Tabun C2 here with the Qafzeh school group, and the Tabun 1 with the archaic group. Another thing interesting is that the diversity documented by the two mandibles from Qafzeh seems higher, seems more important than what we can see at school and Chanidar. Because school, we have the two individuals very close here, and Chanidar, we have the individuals, the three individuals here. Chanidar is a site in Iraq from the Middle Paleolithic too. And which was very interesting with the CT scan that we have for the mandible of Qafzeh 9 is that it allowed us to, it was a very high quality resolution for the microCT, so we could analyze a little bit more the mandible, and to see the structures and inner structures of the mandible, and we have detected some interesting elements. For example, here we can see on the condylar process that there are some defects. So the condylar process is the articulation between the mandible and the cranium. So we were interested on that defects, and thanks to the CT slices, we could investigate under the defect, and we have identified some vascular canals and some sclerotic trabecular bones right under the defect. So it was not something that was post-mortem, it was clearly something that happens during the life of the individual, and the bone reacted to that incident and created that higher density bone. And interestingly, the individual Qafzeh have some malposition of the teeth, the anterior teeth, leading to a malocclusion. So probably which happen is that the malocclusion and troubles to chewing have provoked some troubles in the articulation of the mandible with the cranium, and the bone reacted to that troubles, and this is called an osteochondritis dissecans. Other defects that were identified on the Qafzeh mandible is this defect here. It is not possible to see that from the outside of the bone, only thanks to the microCT slices. We have identified this defect. We can see just a little deformation of the surface of the bone, which tells us that it's not post-mortem. It is really something that happened during the life of the individual. It wasn't an insect or some chemical processes during the post-mortem alteration. It was really something that happened during the life of the individual. We have also around the defect a bone a little bit with an higher density than the other parts. So after the reconstruction and after the analysis, we have concluded that is something that occurred during the growing of the bones, which is called a non-ossifying fibroma. So it's something that happened, it's a defect that is created during the growing of the bone. Sometimes it's disappear with time at the end of the growing, and sometimes we can see some rests of this pathology. In modern populations, it's very common, but not on the mandible. It's common for the femora and for the tibia, or for the upper limbs, but in the mandible, only 20 cases have been described in the clinical literature since 1964. So it's a location that is very rare. It presented also some alterations and some defects in the teeth. So we analyzed them. Two of them are caries. We can see an example here. Caries are not, there are not a lot of caries described for the Middle Paleolithic individuals in the Levant, but also in Europe. There are very few cases for now described and published. Interestingly, in Qafzeh we found two caries, and in the, other individuals like Qafzeh 3, 4, and 7, there have been also previously noted some caries. In the Levant, only 3 of the other individuals presented this kind of defects: School 2, Kebara 27, and Hyonim 20. So it's not so common in the other populations, but for Qafzeh we have an incidence that is very high compared to the other sites, which is very interesting, and we can and raises the question about the origin of that defect on the NML for the site. Is it something linked with the food, or something linked to genetic factors or other environmental factor? For now we cannot not tell, but it raises that question. Another defect detected on Qafzeh 9 tooth was this defect at the junction between the enamel and the dentin. It has no contact with the exterior of the tooth, and it's very symmetric. So doesn't seem something taphonomical or chemical. And after doing some differential diagnosis, we identify that it could be a pre-eruptive intracoronal resorption, which is something that happens when the tooth are erupting, and it's some ameloblast came from the outside of the teeth and come to the dentin, and after they progressively destroy the dentin. So it's benign at the beginning, but as it is progressive, it gives a higher risk for caries, but also for tooth fracture. So it fragilized the teeth affected. And we have not found that defect on teeth with caries. This one was intact, so it's interesting. And in others tooth, there are no sign of this pre-eruptive intracoronal resorption. So we have an exceptional incidence of developmental pathology on Qafzeh 9 mandible, and it's very interesting that for just one bone we have three different growth-related pathologies, and also because on the skull it was not detected any pathology of this kind or other pathologies on the analysis we have done. And in the other Levantine fossils, we have not found such pathologies too. So it's for now it is very interesting, but I just have to mention that to find these pathologies, we have to do CT scan and analyze this individual this way. So maybe in the future we will find some of this kind of pathologies or other pathologies. It would be very interesting to do this kind of analysis and observation on other fossils. I said that we didn't find on other individual except one individual, the individual Qafzeh 10. So Qafzeh 10 it's the individual buried with Qafzeh 9. It's a young child with an age of death comprised around 6 years old. Any present two growth-related disorder and unilateral craniostenosis, which is a closure of the suture, cranial suture, too soon, which is problematic for the growing of the skull and the brain. And he had also on the right femora and here chondroblastoma. The chondroblastoma is something that's also benign and very common on modern populations, but it's similar to the non-ossifying fibroma that we have detected on Qafzeh 9. So we have two individuals with growth-related pathology on the same burial, which is, I think, very interesting, but without paleogenetic studies, it is not possible to conclude something about that, but there are some interesting evidence about this too, about this double burial, I think. So to come to some conclusions, we have found that there are a morphometric diversity among the Qafzeh hominins for both mandible and inner ear. That was unexpected for the Qafzeh. Um, and this raises questions about the high variability among the early anatomical modern humans, but also for the other Levantine individuals. And as we've seen before, the studies focus on some individuals, so it will be very interesting to study the intravariability of all the sites to see what's going on for them. And it's also the results we presented here are very interesting for the different scenario of human dispersal in the Middle East, because we found that some structure didn't present a clear separation between the archaic individuals, so-called Neanderthal from Hamoud, from the Derrier or Taboun, and the anatomically modern humans from Qafzeh or School. So it raises some new question, or at least it's bring some information for discussing and debate a little bit more about the different scenario. Also, it was very interesting because it allowed us to identify some rare developmental pathologies on Qafzeh 9, and they can be put in relation with the different previous studies on non-adult individual, which has identified growth-related pathologies or other pathologies on the individual from Qafzeh. And it will be very interesting to pursue this kind of analysis on the different sites to identify if it's something that is only seen on Qafzeh or it is seen, or we could be find that on other sites. And this because this exceptional incidents raises also some question about the size of the group, about the relationship between the individual of the Qafzeh group. So without paleogenetic studies, because we didn't have enough collagen to do paleogenetic studies for now for the Levant. They are the only evidence that we can discuss about, so morphology and paleopathology. So it would be interesting to continue this kind of studies and to analyze other groups. So thank you very much for being here today and listening to this lecture, and some acknowledgement, some people that I would like to thanks for the research I've done, and of course my supervisors, but also people with I work with, and also the different curator and institutions who give me access to the different fossils. So thank you very much to everyone. And if you have any question, I will be very happy to answer them.